do you hear in Bethany's voice?
What jumped out at me automatically is this sense of exasperation that I'm tired of keep fighting. But then I'm also desperate for the well-being of my children.
Yeah. I'm feeling that familiar, I'm stuck.
Yes.
What do I do now? If I let him have 50-50 custody like he wants, I save money. I maybe save some sanity because he'll stop fighting me and maybe he'll be happier to deal with. Maybe he'll treat my kids better because he'll be happier. But can they tolerate half their time with this person who I don't think really wants to be with them or wants to care for them? He just wants to win with me.
Yes, I like this for us in our show because our show is about letting go or fighting. And we always highlight the risks of the conflict to the kids with the fighting. In this case, the question is, what are the risks of me letting go? What's the price? Can I live with my choice to let it go?
Hey, this is Diane Dirks.
And I'm Rick Voiles.
We've been working with co-parents in conflict for more than 2 decades. We've taught classes, written books, counseled parents, empathized and agonized a few times to help people make sense of their complicated families.
We were talking one day and it occurred to us that helping the most difficult cases comes down to one simple concept. Is one parent willing to let go of the tug-of-war rope, or is it worth it to hold on and fight?
So we invite you to take this journey with us each episode as we tackle the questions, should you hold on or let it go? Welcome to Co-Parent Dilemmas, where we give you practical solutions to those impossible co-parents. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Diane.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Yeah, nothing really exciting to report. It's kind of like, boring is best.
Yeah. Uneventful.
Uneventful.
Right?
There you go. Yeah, I can't say boring really in my life at this point.
So our lives are boring, but the 2 people we're going to talk about today are not boring.
Oh, no.
They want to be boring. They wish their lives were boring.
Yes.
And I think today's episode is really about gambling and how it feels to many parents out there who are in the litigation system, who oftentimes can't even get a good piece of advice from an attorney or a therapist about how to protect themselves or protect their kids, because it's often a mutually exclusive kind of proposition. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we seek answers. But in this arena, there's often not one answer.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like we either save ourselves or save our kids, but we can't do both.
Oh, and that's a tough choice. Yes.
Very, very tough choice. We all know that a lot of divorced parents who have difficult or impossible co-parents, it's easy to say, wish they would just fall off the face of the earth, right? Yeah. Don't get any ideas, co-parents, to mess with the brakes on their car or anything like that. But, that's one part of our brains to say, boy, wouldn't it be easy for me if I didn't have to deal with this person?
Yep.
But then ultimately, before you hire the hitman, you say to yourself, if this person that I can't stand weren't around, I think my children would suffer.
Right.
And then you think better of, how can I take their parental rights away? Or I hope they fall down a long dark hole and never come up or whatever.
Or wish they would volunteer to go away.
Yeah, I think I'll just go away.
But then on the other hand, which is the gamble that we're going to talk about, if the other parent is so bad that not only are they hurting me, if I expose my kids to them, will my kids be hurt?
Right. And then there's that mental health question.
Right.
I know I can't fix this person, but how do I help my kids or keep my kids from being affected in the long term by the person that I had to leave because I was being so affected?
Right. Yes.
Or maybe left me and I realized, wow, I'm so much better off without this person, So it's difficult. This is probably one of the most complex things we'll address on this show, I think, because there aren't any real answers.
And one of the things that complicates it is we could be all completely convinced that this other parent is not good for our children. But the court operates on the model of protecting parental rights. So it's almost impossible for this other parent to not have some kind of parental time with these kids, which could be dangerous to the kids.
Right. Because you're thinking the damage that could be done in one day could affect my children, even though they're with me 90% of the time.
And we're not just physically. I mean, we mean psychologically, we're thinking predominantly.
Right. And we also know that Child Protective Services typically don't spend a lot of time on, if any time, on psychological abuse.
Right.
They don't have the resources for that, which is a whole other issue in our society, but I won't go there today. So let's go ahead and play Bethany's voicemail, and that'll get us started on this topic.
Very good.
Okay. Hi, Diane and Rick. My name is Bethany. I am being taken to court for the 6th time in 6 years. Father wants more custody of our twin 8-year-old boys. I am a single mother. During the week, Father has first and third weekends currently. He is fighting right now for week on, week off, as he finally lives in the same city we do. Is this good for children? Like I said, they're 8-year-old twin boys. I don't feel so. We're in 3rd grade. We are struggling. I don't want to deal with Dad anymore. I'm so exhausted from it. So I feel giving that to him, I don't have to deal with him anymore. However, I don't feel that that's the best for my children. And yes, I've listened to your podcast. Dad is a narcissist. Now what? Now what do I do? I can't change him. But the manipulation, the disparaging to my children, they are in therapy. We just started. But is this good for the children week on, week off? Thank you.
Okay. To the casual listener, this voicemail sounds like she's struggling with, should I do 50-50 or not? And we've talked about 50-50 custody in a prior episode. And we could go into all the risks and benefits of 50-50 custody and all the stuff that we do. I don't think that's what this voicemail is all about.
Mm-hmm.
What do you hear in Bethany's voice?
What jumped out at me automatically is this sense of exasperation that I'm tired of keep fighting. Mm-hmm. But then I'm also desperate for the well-being of my children.
Yeah. I'm feeling that familiar, I'm stuck.
Yes.
What do I do now? Do I save myself by letting go?
Mm-hmm.
If I let him have 50-50 custody like he wants, I save money. I maybe save some sanity in the short term.
Yeah.
Because he'll stop fighting me and maybe he'll be happier to deal with. Maybe he'll treat my kids better because he'll be happier. There's all of that. That seems like a sure thing. But can they tolerate half their time with this person who I don't think really wants to be with them or wants to care for them? He just wants to win with me. Are you hearing the same?
Yes.
Kind of frustration.
And I like this for us in our show, because our show is about letting go or fighting. And we always highlight the risks of the conflict to the kids with the fighting. In this case, the question is, what are the risks of me letting go? What's the price? Can I live with my choice to let it go in the long run?
And unfortunately, I don't care how much money you have, there are no guarantees that if you litigate and fight something, that your kids will be okay.
Right.
Kids are little complicated humans with different personalities and different brains and different ways of responding and reacting to life in general. And there's no way to purchase that for your child.
No, not with one decision.
Yeah, but we sometimes get the feeling that if we just go to court, we'll get a fair shake.
Right. Right.
And those of you who are thinking that, you might want to go back and listen to the Case from Hell that we did in season 2. That sort of proves that there isn't always a guarantee that fighting is going to get you what you want.
Or even winning, getting you what you want in the long run.
So I think my emphasis today is going to be to sort of join in with those parents who are feeling this stuck feeling and validate the feeling more than give solutions. If you look at this from a medical model, and I've often done this with clients to try to convince them that mental health can be as difficult and complex and life-saving or putting life at risk when you don't take care of it. But if you think about, let's say you go to your doctor because you're having some pain or the other, and they do some tests and they reveal to you, you've got an aggressive form of cancer. And you maybe think of your ex as an aggressive form of cancer, right? I mean, it just grows and grows.
Life-threatening, yes.
And it sort of infiltrates every part of your life. So that's kind of where the analogy lies. But your doctor, who is the oncologist, maybe, who's the expert on this type of disease, says to you, listen, you can decide not to get any treatment. And you probably could live another 9 months to a year fairly healthy. And you could travel and you could do all the last things you want to do with your family. Or you could do this very aggressive chemotherapy and followed by surgery and followed by radiation or whatever the protocol is. And that's going to be a really rough year for you. But there's still no guarantees at the end of that year. You could die before the end of the year in treatment. Sometimes the treatment is worse than the disease. But you could go into remission and live another 5 years. So what do you want to do? And I can't imagine being put in that position, but I know that people are.
Oh, yes.
And I've often thought of that. What would I do? I may say, I don't want to put myself through the sickness and the trouble and the chemotherapy and the hospital visits and have my family put through that. Let's just take the year and live, right?
Yeah.
Let's go on a couple of cruises. Let's just spend all my money, right?
Yes.
And let's go. But I can almost guarantee you, if I made that decision, my husband and my children would maybe be begging me not to do it that way because they don't want me to die.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would do. The selfish part of me would say, let's just end it now. And, but the part that I feel for my family, who may be looking at me with tears saying, please try to fight this.
Yes.
Would be a very hard kind of thing to face. How does this relate to Bethany and what we're talking about here? It relates in that that's how hard this decision can be for a lot of co-parents. If I let go of this and let dad have 50-50 custody, I, in essence, am letting myself have some peace. Just let him have it.
Yep.
I don't have to talk to an attorney. We don't have to have a guardian ad litem or a custody evaluator involved. This could be a 2-year process. I don't think I have the bandwidth for that. It's hard enough for me to be a single parent and do my job and deal with my family and what else is going on.
And I end the conflict that might be hurting my children if I just kept fighting. Yes.
But what if I do that and my kids suffer? What if their grades become worse? What if they come home crying, saying, Daddy is yelling at me and I hate it over there. And why did you do this to me? Right?
Yeah, I'm worthless.
The worry of the regret.
Yes.
Which will feel worse?
Yeah.
The constant stabbing pain of him in my life, constantly fighting me, telling me, that I'm a horrible parent and parading witnesses against me and all the depositions I have to go through and the discovery process and all of that just wears you down that I could totally avoid, or that's the chemotherapy. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That can kill you.
Should I go through all of that in order to,
or do I just say, hey, my kids will be fine? How do we know that? So first of all, I just want to express that I never did have to make that choice. So I don't know how that feels, but I can imagine it. I was never put in that position. However, I would like to introduce another email from Jeff.
Okay.
He's coming at this from a different perspective, but I think it's relevant to the discussion because he's not the custodial parent. And he listened to the case from hell and said, "Dear Rick and Diane, I have a long drawn out case of parental alienation. My co-parent and I are scheduled for a trial, and she has ramped up alienating my daughter, who is 10, from me. She has tried to alienate my 13-year-old son, but he seems to be wiser for the most part to what she's doing. I had a custody evaluation in December of 2021 to January 2022, which recommends 50-50 custody for us, but the mediation is broken down to take the recommendations. So now we're going to trial. I've slowly worked back into gaining more time with the kids and staying away from her madness. The latest alienation has been that their mom is asserting that I'm dangerous. She has no proof, and most of it points to the fact that I'm not her target anymore. The kids are the target. My daughter seems to be the current main target, and I have them both in family counseling. My daughter has had many panic attacks from staying at my place. I moved closer to them in February of 2022, and both have stayed overnight for 8 months with no issues. Now my daughter seems to be reliving a trauma that never happened. My co-parent is working on getting witnesses, and they're not agreeing since there is truly no evidence that I was dangerous around the kids. I'm having no issues finding character witnesses to say that I'm a loving and caring father. The neglect and abuse from the mother is really difficult to prove. She's a 4th grade teacher in my kid's school, and it's easy for her to do whatever she wants. Some of the parents at the school who know me have been reaching out and saying how bad they feel, what their mother is doing to them and me. So my question is, should I continue to push to get more than 50-50 custody? I don't have a guardian ad litem since I've been dumping tons of money into a 2.5-year divorce, upwards of $100,000 in attorney fees now. And I'm just trying to get through these 2 trials. Thanks for any advice. Please let me know if you want more details." So I'm hearing from Jeff that he sort of has the opposite problem. The custody evaluator said 50-50 is what should happen. He's feeling this intense alienation. His child is having panic attacks over something he knows didn't happen. And if he lets go, he just also goes with the 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Which isn't what he wants. He wants more time, but he would have to fight for more time.
And more time would mean possibly protecting the children or giving the children less exposure to
the mom.
To the mom.
Yeah. Now, the fact that he's got a custody evaluator saying 50-50 would be appropriate tells me the custody evaluator doesn't see what he's seeing. That doesn't make his pain and frustration and worry any less.
True.
Because he's seeing the reality of the situation as it plays out with his children.
He's seen his 10-year-old go through a panic attack.
Yes. Now, I want to point out a couple of things to both of these listeners. Both Bethany and Jeff are wondering, do I let it go?
Yes.
Just let the 50-50 happen. Both of them letting go means 50-50, right?
Yep.
No fighting, just saying, okay, let's just do whatever. Both of them realize, though, the 50-50 could hurt their children.
Yes, in the long run, for a long time.
So Jeff wants to fight for more time, maybe, and Bethany wants to fight for nothing to change.
Yep.
He's fighting for change. She's fighting, let's keep things the same. And I think they both are stuck in that cancer diagnosis.
Yes. What choice do you make for the future that gives the best outcome? And how do you know?
So, first of all, there's no blanket answer. I think all of our listeners are smart enough to know you can't just say this is what everyone should do, just like you couldn't say that to the cancer patient, right?
Right.
So, but we have to look at variables. So, if you were a cancer patient, what would the variables be that would make you decide whether you just live your life for the next year without treatment or go into the very difficult treatment? What variables would determine that for you?
One obviously would be money, but the key ones I would think would be, for me, my children, and my grandchildren. And
Well, I would first think of age.
okay, yeah, okay. If I'm 90, I'm not.
If I'm 19, I'm probably going to say
I'll take the chance.
Body's more likely to be able to recover. We know that a 19-year-old's body is still producing healtty cells that aren't, your brain cells aren't dying off yet. Right?
Yeah, I remember
brain is
those
still
days.
developing.
That used to be like.
I think at my age now, I would think differently.
True.
And especially if you're 80 years old and you've lived a good life. I think that's a huge variable.
Yeah.
I think your current state of health would be a variable. If I've been working out all my life and eating healthy and I'm a pretty healthy person, I may think I can do this. But if I'm racked with other issues, diabetes, heart disease,
right,
then maybe I would make a different decision just because maybe my body, the doctor may even advise me your body won't be able to handle that kind of treatment. So I think once you get over the shock of the diagnosis and treatment possibilities, you would have to start thinking through it more logically. What are the possibilities? And then you would go to the emotional things, I suppose. Or vice versa. You deal with the emotional things. And then you'd say, well, wait a minute. I know you want me to fight, but I'm 92 years old. So let's look at this the same way. What are the variables that matter? And I think age matters here, age of the children.
Yes.
Look what Jeff said about the 10-year-old versus the 13-year-old. That's huge. Why is the 10-year-old suffering so much? Because she's 10.
Right.
And I think, Jeff, the blessing is your 13-year-old mom tried some of this stuff on an older kid, and he was like, come on. Because his brain is developed differently now. They process information differently. A 13-year-old can understand more abstract concepts. They're the ones who don't believe in fairy tales.
Right. Santa Claus.
Yeah. Because they can think through abstractly and critically, where a 10-year-old just believes everything a parent tells them because everything's black and white. It's either good or bad or right or wrong. And so my encouragement for you, Jeff, is that I don't know that getting more custody changes mom's tactics.
Probably not.
So what, you go to every other weekend and she's with you most of the time, but she gets the neglect or abuse or whatever you think is happening on the weekend and then comes to your home and is convinced that you're still dangerous.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily more time unless you can prove that mom shouldn't have time at all or should only have supervised time with the kids, which it sounds like you can't, because she is pretty savvy about knowing how to deal with these kinds of things. So there's going to be some time for mom, and she still has opportunity to hurt your child. So is the most important thing getting time with your child? Or is it more important that you continue and develop your relationship with your child so that when she's 13 or 14, she's going, wait a minute. And she's got her older brother to help her.
Yeah. And she's got the developmental capacity now to think more abstractly, and she's got a history that she can draw back on. Because the 13-year-old has a history with dad. There's a bond there already. And the 10-year-old probably does too, that she can, when she's older, draw back on.
Yeah, that's important. I think it's also important, and this would be another variable, social and family support. If I got the cancer diagnosis,
Yes.
and I'm a lonely old cat lady who doesn't have any family or friends, that's probably going to make part of my decision about whether I move on or not. But if I'm a mother of 4 with 16 grandchildren,
right,
and they're all at my bedside crying, "Please, Granny, don't die," I'm probably going to feel supported enough that I could maybe go through some treatment with their support, right? So here's Jeff saying, Mom can't seem to get any support from witnesses. He can line up a ton of witnesses to say that he's a good dad. His son's not believing Mom. Some of the parents at the school are telling him, "We don't buy this. You're a good parent." That wouldn't make me want to fight. That would make me go, you know what? I don't care what she does. My kids are going to know who I am because of what I do naturally.
And that's good because carrying the analogy of the support system around, if you put your energy into creating a support system around the 10-year-old and the 13-year-old, around your children, so they have other resources to go to mitigate Mom, then it's not just you and your bond, but you've put a network, a net out there, a safety net for your children that could really work.
And that's not to say that your daughter might not have a rough few years ahead of her.
Definitely.
But chances are, if you stay cool-headed and loving and caring and supportive and, just there when needed, your child's more likely to turn of a certain age and decide, I don't want to be with Mom anymore.
Mom's nuts. Yeah.
We've talked before here in Georgia, when they're 14, they can decide who they want to live with. And I think it's a terrible idea to tell your child, when you're 14, you can come live with me, because you're setting them up for, if you don't, I'll be disappointed kind of thing, right? If you don't say a word and just be the parent your child needs to be, they'll do that all on their own.
Right.
You don't have to coach them. Parents who have to coach their kids to want to come live with them when they're 14 usually aren't the kind of parents that the kids want to live with. Yep. They just feel pressured because if I don't, you'll freak out on me. And that's not very healthy. But the healthiest kids really do choose because they know who their loving parent is. And some of those kids don't choose because they still know who their loving parent is.
Right.
But they don't make that choice because they don't want to go through the pain and suffering of having to hear it from their more unhealthy parent. So there's something. Go ahead.
But here's the other side that's frustrating in the equation. How much pain that I'm inviting by not fighting, how much pain am I inviting into my child's life? And for any parent, how much is too much?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, she's going to have a few rough months. We could say that, but oh my gosh, do I want to put my child through pain if I can stop it? And maybe fighting, I could stop it. I don't know.
Well, what are the odds?
Oh, there's the gamble.
You can bet on anything in Vegas, but this. There's no sportcaster or odds maker who are going to sit down with you and say, odds are if you spend $100,000 and fight for the next year and a half, your kids will grow up healthy. You've got 62% odds.
Right. Right.
And, if you're not a gambler, you're going to just say, well, I'm not going to take the gamble. So is the lack of treatment going to kill me, or is the treatment going to kill me?
Yes.
Is the litigation going to hurt the kids, or is failing to litigate going to hurt the kids?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't you just want to go outside and scream?
I do. I do.
Know. Yes. That's how these parents feel. So, but I want to go back to the variables as the encouragement here.
Please give some encouragement. Yes.
You have to trust yourself and trust that you've given your children a good foundation. And we know that to be true. The foundation happens in the first 5 to 10 years, right? That your kids get to know who you are. Remember when we were processing the case from hell, remember Kelly Baker We had her on, the custody evaluator, and she talked about that. Her encouragement for Sarah was that she had a lot of time with her children before all of this happened. That meant that bond was not just going to disappear. It will come back to them. Might not come back to them until they have their own children, where they go, wait a minute. Now that I'm a mom, I see this differently. It could come back to them when they're in their 20s. It could come back to them next year. I mean, we don't know. So the encouragement I have for both Bethany and Jeff is you've had a lot of good time with these kids before this all blew up. And that means that the chances are that they will come back to you, especially if you continue to be that good, solid parent, are pretty high without doing anything.
And I guess that's where hearing the stories of the alienated children as adults could give us hope.
Yes. I'll put again in the show notes our Facebook page for adults who were alienated children, because we're interested in stories. I've gathered some really interesting stories and hope to do a series on that coming up this year sometime. But I've seen parents whose kids remained estranged from them even into adulthood because that parent had his or her own issues that they never dealt with. You know what I'm saying? Yes, they were alienated, but because of the way they responded to the alienation, the anger that they showed, the constant fighting that they went about doing, maybe they needed to deal with their own anger, their own way of dealing with relationships, that it just kept their children away from them. In other words, what the alienating parent was saying about the other parent sort of rang true for the kid.
Right.
So what I'm saying is keep your nose clean in that way. Keep being that loving, unconditionally loving, solid, truthful, honest, stable parent. And the chances are the kids will return to that.
Right.
So I think that's hugely important to remember. So if you are a little bit estranged, Bethany, if you decide to just let go and see how 50-50 works, it's temporary. You can see how it works. Just like if I had cancer, I could try a round of treatment and see how I felt before I decided if I wanted to swallow the whole idea. Right. So there are in-between decisions that can be made. Let's try this and see how it goes. And then you can always fight back later if it feels completely and totally wrong. It's very rarely a clean-cut decision. But if you end up with time, the other parent has the children 50% of the time, use the time you don't have them to work on you.
Right.
Make sure you are dealing with how this has affected you. Make sure you are dealing with the trauma maybe that you've been through or any of that. Because if you don't, what will happen is you'll hook up with a repeat.
Ooh. And have children with them.
Yeah. Ugh. Let's not do that.
No.
Right?
No.
So I don't know that we've resolved anything, but I hope that gives you a way to work through the decision making.
So I think what the hope is here, if we were going to say let it go or hang on, you're talking about hang on to yourself, hang on to being the best person, live out of your values, continue building upon the investment of the bond you made at the early age. So it sounds like we're telling Jeff and Bethany, give it some serious thought, get the best counsel you can from all the people around you that you trust and love, and the decision you make will be the right one.
Yeah. And most decisions we make don't have any guarantees attached to them anyway, right?
Right. Trust your instincts, get information, make a choice, and then work hard.
Yep. I agree. Well, thank you, Jeff and Bethany, for sending those along. I felt your frustration, but I then felt my own frustration coming up, thinking, how do I answer this?
Yes.
But I think we've done our best, Rick.
And that's all the experts can do, right?
Exactly. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't have magic dust. I wish we did, but it's not how it works. So.
Yes. Well, good luck,
All
Jeff.
right.
Good luck,
Yeah.
Bethany.
Okay. We will talk to you all next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. The information contained in this podcast is generic. It must not be misconstrued as constituting legal or psychological advice. Decisions relevant to any specific individual, family system, or case require the direct evaluation of skilled, child-centered professionals.